Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Renewal Cast today. We are joining each other today, and we're coming to you on Thursday because we had some stuff going on yesterday. But Thursday, today is Thursday, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just checking. My week's been kind of crazy too. So just making sure. But welcome to Renewal Cast. We're talking about the church in the London Baptist Confession of Faith and the 1689. And the church is a long chapter 26. It's 15 paragraphs long. So we've been dividing those up. And today we are in paragraphs 11 through 15 is kind of what we're hoping to get through. So I just, so we've been talking about the church, the role of the elder and the deacon. That's what we talked about last week. Primarily, we said that one of the functions of the elder is to preach and to teach the word of God. John, let me ask you, since you're the resident pastor here, when you're going to be gone, do you have somebody fill in for you, or do you just not have church? Are you the only one that can preach in your church, or how do you do that at your church?
Well, I am gone from time to time. I have normally one of the other elders. He likes to preach, and he's put some effort into trying to be skillful at it. And so he likes to fill the pulpit when I'm gone. Does a pretty good job. People like it when he preaches. So he likes to take that task. We have another gentleman has 20 some years of elder experience who's joined our congregation recently, and I anticipate him becoming an elder in the future. But he can preach too, so he's preached in the last year as well. So yeah, I'm fortunate to have a couple men that are elder qualified, and one is in fact an elder that can preach when I'm gone.
Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
You ever ask anybody from a long ways away to come?
Yeah, and so at other times, it's appropriate, I think, for us. I think the preaching is the elder's role, but the elders can ask others by extension to come and fill the pulpit. And so Jay's a long ways away, but we may ask Jake sometime to come and fill the pulpit. I think one time maybe we did. It just didn't work out, but love to have Jay come and fill the pulpit for us. We've had other pastors and people come fill the pulpit. Sure.
Yeah. So I want to kind of latch on one thing you said. You used the word that you were fortunate. And I would say that there are churches, some smaller, some medium-sized churches that don't have people within their congregation that are able to preach, or they feel comfortable doing that. That makes it a little bit maybe harder for a pastor that's thinking that needs to take a break or be gone from time to time. Any ideas on that? I mean, preaching is it's a serious thing, and the pastor wants to make sure that he guards the pulpit. They want to determine that the person is a right fit in coming and fill the pulpit. So you don't just want any Tom, Dick, or Harry to come and preach in your church, but yet pastors need a break. So, and they need to be gone from time to time. Things come up. So, any idea on maybe how you would determine that, or?
Yeah. So, I use the word fortunate in God's providence. A blessing maybe is a better word. I don't think.
Yeah.
Picking on my word there. I don't know, but anyway.
No, I wasn't being derogatory. I mean, I just,
Okay.
I do think that you're
We're
pulling
blessed.
out the fact that you're blessed. Not every church is every church is in the same situation.
Right.
Yeah.
So, at first, my situation wasn't, when I came to this church, wasn't that way. And so you had to find, pray. First of all, the thing I did when I came here is I started praying fervently that God would raise up a Timothy sort of, type person that I could pour into. and disciple and become an elder and preach. So when I had that guy, when I was gone, he could take the pulpit and become an elder. And God, right when I came here, a young man, he got saved, and the Lord gave him the gift to be able to become an elder and preach. And so the Lord blessed that. So I would say for a pastor, beg God to give you that man, and then recognize him, and then pour into him, train him up, and teach him, and then yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
hopefully
No.
more than one. Hopefully more than one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very good. Very good. I think we're bordering on. I think this is really good because we're actually getting into what the confession is going to talk about here in paragraph 11 a little bit. So, Jay.
Although it be incumbent on the bishops or pastors of the churches to be instant in preaching the word by way of office, yet the work of preaching the word is not so peculiarly confined to them, but that others also, gifted and fitted by the Holy Spirit for it, and approved and called by the church, may and ought to perform it.
Yeah. So this is kind of what we've been talking about a little bit here. That the pastor isn't the only one that can preach in the life of the church, but there's an opportunity for others who are gifted and called. And I really think that, as John was just pointing out, that this is a point that really needs to be made here, is that the role of pastor should be to try to raise up those that can fan that gift, and I like what you said, beg God for that because not every church is in the same boat there, and different churches are in different places there, certainly. So my question is what are some practical ways that a pastor might start that process of pouring into the next generation when they think about pastoral ministry, or specifically the area of preaching? How do you go about, like you said, John, finding that person and then pouring into them?
Yeah, I'll give a pastoral perspective, and then Jay maybe could give a different perspective as one who's training and doing some preaching himself from a different perspective. So, from my perspective, like I said, it starts with prayer, and then trying to recognize people. Listen to your people in Bible study, Sunday school class, as you have conversations. Listen to the ones who really love the Word, who have a mind for the truth, who have discernment, who are picking up doctrinal truths with clarity, and then have more conversations with those kind of men, and then feed them books. Have try to meet with them, have lunch with them, try to give them more. Maybe give them a book to read. If they read it and then they want to talk about it more, that's great. And then maybe develop an elder training program. I did that. And I took this gentleman that I was talking about earlier through that elder training program at the church here, and that was a couple-year program where I took him, where he had to read books and write papers, and then give them opportunities to teach or do devotionals at different times. Give them opportunities. Maybe put them at the rest home or something like that. Whatever opportunities you can give them to get them in front of people to teach. So those are some ideas. Maybe Jay, you can have a different perspective and maybe help.
Sure. Historically, quickly, they were under a little bit of pressure because they're allowing people to preach that weren't formally trained. Okay, so they wanted to legitimize that you didn't have to have a formal education. But they would, how do you get developed for the office of elder unless you're in the office? How do you know that they're capable of teaching, right? So they would listen to their public prayers. They would have them preach to a members only congregation. We might say like a Sunday night would be a good opportunity to let them teach. But Bible studies, nursing home is a place where I kind of cut my teeth. But the church building up, being the sending agency for those teachers and preachers so that you develop those gifted brethren for the ministry, you have to have opportunities to show your gifts. So being able to engage with them, like I say, reading books together, be a great thing to do. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. I think that's good perspective. I think there's many ways that a pastor can pour into people to go and find those things. 2 Timothy 2:2, what you've heard from me in the presence of many witnesses and trust of faithful men who will be able to teach others also. I think that's the important point, is that we're working toward that. We're putting things in the hands of the people, trying to discern.
One church we were part of had a very thorough training program, even Hebrew and Greek, if you want to. So, local churches need to take perhaps more training, and you can utilize seminaries, of course, but the local pastors training up their own people needs to be a bigger emphasis than in places.
Yeah, this might be. Go ahead, John.
This might be where we talk about the TPA.
That's what I was going to say. Yep.
Yeah, the Timothy Pastoral Apprenticeship, which our church is a member church of, where we're a part of a group of churches that trains Timothy's up, and they can learn the languages, and they can. It's seminary level training that churches are giving their people.
Yeah, really done in the context of the local church, and utilizing the ministry and the work of the local church. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this kind of goes maybe without saying a little bit, but how do you balance protecting or guarding the pulpit? I mean, I know pastors that just are reluctant to let anybody come and fill their pulpit because they're afraid that they're going to say something they're not going to agree with, and it's going to cause more problems in the long run. How do you guard that? Letting people come, giving them opportunity, right? Using that as a training ground, but yet at the same time guarding it. I guess maybe my question is, how do you know when is the right time to put a young Timothy in that position of preaching to the congregation?
Well,
how does that person know when they're ready? Maybe too.
Well, I think by having a close relationship with these young men, and then knowing where they're at, and then I think a good place to start is, hey, let me see your manuscript before you get up there. Let me read it, and being able to make sure there's nothing, they're not going to say anything for their own good, right? Because they don't want to say anything that's wrong. If
right.
they're in the right place before the Lord, they're not going to want to say anything that's wrong, and for your people's sake. So I think that's a good place to start. I think if you learn to trust them as they learn to develop and have a good sound theological base, then you can kind of let that go some. But I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
You got any ideas, Jay?
Yeah, I wouldn't let somebody I wasn't confident in just have free range. That's for sure. That's part of the training them up. So go listen to them at the nursing home, and maybe you can give them some pointers and work with them. And
yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's keep forging ahead here. Paragraph
12. As all believers are bound to join themselves to particular churches when and where they have opportunity so to do, so all that are admitted unto the privileges of a church are also under the censures and government thereof, according to the rule of Christ.
Okay, so if somebody has opportunity there to join a local church, that's kind of the point of this paragraph. There's I'm going to say this because I know there's people that think this way. Let me ask this question. Why should I join a local church and go through that process and do those things when I can attend the church and worship and do those things, why do I need to actually join it?
Why wouldn't you? I mean, if I'm committed to the Lord and I'm committed to you as the body of Christ, I'm committed to who Christ is committed to. If you've got a child in your family and he says, I don't want to play with the other kids, you know there's something wrong, right?
Yeah. And then I think that the doctrine of church membership is implicit throughout really the whole New Testament. And it's really hard to understand it without church membership. In other words, for example, the command to submit to your elders. Without church membership, does that mean I have to submit to all the elders of all the churches in my town?
Right.
How about the next town over? How does that make any sense without church membership? How does church discipline work without church membership? It doesn't. How do all the one another's work without church membership? How do all the numbers work where it says the majority, where it's talking about a church vote goes down, and Paul says the majority of you? How does that happen without a membership? They have to know who's in, who's out. They have to know how many to know whether there's a majority or not. So I think this idea of church membership, it's just implicit throughout the whole New Testament. I mean, it's really hard to understand the New Testament without church membership. So I think it's hard to really have a healthy church without church membership.
Yeah, I would say that to the one that says, well, I can just go to a local church. I don't have to become a member. I can, just worship, but I don't need to become a member. I'm a member of the universal church. I don't need to be a member of the local church. I would say that that's actually a very selfish perspective, because you're putting the I before everything, right? Even your understanding of going to church is all about you. It's not about how you can take part in this, how you can serve in the local congregation. And like you pointed out, John, it's not about the one another's, how you can encourage and bolster. It's not about how you do that in the context of a local church like God designed it to be, to take part, to put yourself under the leadership of a church, to submit to the discipline. It's very selfish way to look and view church. God designed church, the way he did for a reason. And in the confession here speaks of privileges of the church and the censures or the discipline of the church. Maybe let's just, I think we kind of hit this a little bit, but maybe let's make it clear. What are the privileges of joining a local church?
Well, I think service is one. I just had a conversation with somebody just a little bit ago here this morning, in which this person about leading a Bible study and how that would look being a member of our church, and how that's really the way to do that is to be a member of the church to lead a Bible study in the church. And imagine the church being able, imagine somebody leading a Bible study in the church without being a member of the church. The church,
right.
That would be really awkward. It'd be really hard. It'd be hard for the elders to take responsibility of that. It'd be hard. It would just be a very difficult situation.
Yeah.
It's hard to, when Paul tells Timothy in 1 Timothy 1:3-7, he says, remain on at Ephesus and charge people to not teach any different doctrine. Well, if you're not a member of the church, what's different doctrine, right? Because when you could become a member of church, you agree to a doctrinal statement, right? A confession,
mm-hmm.
And then that's your confession. So the anything different than that confession would be, that's how you'd apply that, right? And so if you're not coming together as members and saying this is our confession, so even how to apply that. So it's actually very practical, just in so many ways. So I would say very much in service, how you serve.
Yeah, I would agree. And there's encouragement and building up that happens in the context of a local church as members that doesn't just happen when you're kind of on the fringes or the outside. When you're taking part of the church, when you have say in what is going on in the life of the church, when you're involved in, we're doing Vacation Bible School this week, when you're involved in the lives of even the young ones and their families, and you're thinking about their families when their kids are coming. It's just all these things is tremendously encouraging to the teachers and the families, and it happens within the context of a local church of people that have said we're gonna pull ourselves together. It's a great privilege, to be part of those things that happen. One of the things that the confession seems to mention is that Christians ought to join a local church, or part of the reason for joining a local church is to put yourself under the discipline or the censure of the church. Why is that issue? Why should somebody want that? Why is that important when joining a local church?
Accountability is a good thing. I'll be submissive to the elders. So if you're in sin, have people confront you. That's a positive thing in our Christian walk.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it goes back to the arrogance thing, right? I think it's pretty arrogant for somebody to be at least even part of a community, to be a Christian, to say, I don't need accountability. I don't need somebody to walk beside me and point out areas where I might be straying. It's saying that I'm incapable of error. The only way I'm going to go is godly. I'm never going to fail. That's arrogant. Humility is saying, yes, I want to join a local church. I want the accountability because I don't trust myself. And I know that this institution is the institution that God has designed and put into place for my Christian growth. And you're utilizing that in that institution that God has put into place for that purpose. So the church is extremely important when it comes to Christian growth, and certainly discipline is a part of that.
And not only, just cracking the whip, but I mean, we're talking about gospel. We're talking about forgiveness. We're talking about, if I stray, the church is going to lead me back, and then they're going to forgive me and welcome me back in and restore me, and get me back in right relationship with Christ and His people again, and a thriving walk with the Lord again. So yeah. You bring up a really good point, John, because I think sometimes we need to explain, what we mean when we talk about church discipline and discipline here. Mm-hmm. When you say, cracking the whip, I mean, we think of discipline as a punitive thing, right? That the point is, you do something wrong, we're gonna punish you, and that's really not the point of church discipline. The point of church discipline, and I think Jesus said it best, to win your brother back. Yeah. And so when I stray, or when somebody around me is straying, that the loving thing to do is to point out their error, not because you're judging them or whatever, but you want them to generally repent and come back. And I would say that the church discipline, when you think of the context of Matthew 18 and all of the steps, if somebody sins against you and you go to your brother and they don't, and then you take somebody else with you, and then you take it to I would say most church discipline ends at stage one.
You know, when one brother goes to another, you know, when one you know, sister goes to her sister and says, you know, hey, I believe you sinned against me, you know, and that person repents and you restored your brother, you've won. I mean, that's the end of it. It's done. It's, you know, welcome back into fellowship, and that's great. But so I think I think church discipline is a healthy thing, and it's I think wanting that in your life is a sign of humility and a sign of godliness. And I think we've answered this question, but I just kind of want to highlight it. You know, if one is not a member of a church, can they obey Hebrews 13:17? I think you alluded to this before, John. And that says, obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping watch over your souls as those who will have to give an account. Let them do this with joy, not groaning, for that would be no advantage to you. I mean, am I right? I mean, if you're not a member of a church, if you're not joined to a local congregation, you can't obey that command, right? Because then the question is, who are your leaders? Either you subjectively choose out of the air who you want to submit to, or you don't submit to anybody except for yourself.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think there's some people who aren't formally members that would say, "Well, I'm, you know, I feel like they are my elders. I'm not really a member, but I do submit to them and I do follow them." Well, you know, I think that you need to go ahead and make that a formal thing then, because maybe they need to know that you have that attitude towards them, so that they can have that attitude towards you, and know that because they're going to give an account. You know, they need to
Mhm.
know that you're in their care, so that they're going to give an account for you, so that they care for you like the other sheep.
Yeah,
You know, so I just want to say, I think some
yeah,
people think that attitude, they're not really members, but they have that attitude towards their elders, but their elders don't have that same attitude towards them because they're not committed. They haven't made that commitment. So I just say, if you're listening and you haven't made that commitment, you need to do that.
yeah. All right. Anything else there, guys? Better hit paragraph 13, huh?
No church members, upon any offense taken by them, having performed their duty required of them towards the person they are offended at, ought to disturb any church order, or absent themselves from the assemblies of the church, or administration of any ordinances, upon the account of such offense at any of their fellow members, but to wait upon Christ in the further proceeding of the church.
Okay. So the church, even if people join the church like they're supposed to, like we just talked about, the church is not immune from people disagreeing with one another. If one person offends another, what is the response of the person who is offended when it comes to the church? I mean, when one person's offended, what are they supposed to do here?
Well, they go to them like Matthew 18, but
Okay.
then they're not getting the result that they desire out of that, or it's not happening as quick. And some were removing themselves from the assembly or abstaining from the Lord's Supper or some such thing. And so they're saying, no, you need to continue to participate and wait.
Okay.
Okay.
That
So how
they
does that
want,
apply? How might that apply today, or in just a biblical application?
wait upon Christ as he's in the church, and for the church to proceed, church discipline, start going down Matthew 18, that doesn't necessarily happen overnight, right? Justice takes time. So give it time to work and be patient, pray about it, and continue serving in the church.
Very good. So when problems happen, be patient. Sometimes you just don't do anything. You just keep serving. You keep being patient. You keep serving Christ. You keep loving. And sometimes it just takes time. Things take time sometimes. Good application. Yep.
Okay.
Good. All right. Should we get to next one?
Sure.
As each church and all the members of it are bound to pray continually for the good and prosperity of all the churches of Christ in all places and upon all occasions, to further every one within the bounds of their places and callings in the exercise of their gifts and graces, so the churches, when planted by the providence of God, so as they may enjoy opportunity and advantage for it, ought to hold communion among themselves for their peace, increase of love, and mutual edification. So now we're talking about inter-church communion. The Baptists were independents, and meaning that they didn't have a synod or any hierarchical government, but they still thought that they should associate with one another. They weren't isolated.
Okay. So it's important to pray for other churches.
And do things with other churches.
And do
Kind of
things
like maybe even we're doing things right now. The three of us, we're not in the same church, right?
Yeah. It seems like this is something that could be easily neglected. Especially praying for other churches or caring what's going on in other churches. I think we become a lot of times self-focused.
Mm-hmm.
But it is important to pray for other churches and know what's going on in your community and those churches that you associate with.
That's one thing your church does a good job, Colt. I think once a year maybe get an email from your secretary, and she wants to know if we have how your church can pray for our church. So I think maybe one Sunday a year your church prays for our church. So you guys do a good job of that. So that's good.
Yeah. We're trying to pray for the churches that in our central district.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Just happy on our rotation. The more churches there are, the less often we pray for you, though. So
yeah, that's good. Good praying.
Yeah.
Should we hit 15? We're getting
15. We're getting there. Yep.
In cases of difficulties or differences, either in point of doctrine or administration, wherein either the churches in general are concerned or any one church in their peace, union, and edification, or any member or members of any church are injured in or by any proceedings and censures not agreeable to truth and order, it is according to the mind of Christ that many churches holding communion together do, by their messengers, meet to consider and give their advice in or about that matter in difference, to be reported to all the churches concerned. Howbeit these messengers assembled are not entrusted with any church power, properly so called, or with any jurisdiction over the churches themselves, to exercise any censures either over any churches or persons, or to impose their determination on the churches or officers.
So, Jay, do you have any insight on why they put this in there?
Well, they very much recognizing the universal church and that they're not alone, wanted to associate with other like-minded churches and do that in a number of things, seminaries, and pastoral training, and missionaries, church plants, etc. But they recognize that sometimes when you associate with other churches, problems come up, and so they wanted a way of dealing with those things, and to formally recognize that though, say, one church has a problem, they can go to the association, the other churches, and ask for advice, and that association can give advice, but it has no power over that local church.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting here. And I thought it was good that if there's something going on in the local church and they can't solve the issue, then bring in some others, hear some advice, get some counsel, but then just remember that that's what it is counsel, and ultimately your responsibility going forward to deal with the issue. But that was good.
Tom Hicks has a helpful article on the Association of Baptist Churches. We could link to that or something, but churches associating together, but not stepping on the independency aspect.
Okay.
Right. All right. Chapter 26 is in the books of the Second London Baptist Confession. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. And until next time, we'll catch you later.